Welcome in. 1320 Kings Insider, James Ham. James, we're literally just listening to you and your work over there at Shoot Around. What was your impression talking to De'Aaron today, who hasn't been very vocal in the last couple of games?
Yeah, I think he was better today. I think he was better on Saturday night. He was not great the previous 2 games before that.
Yeah.
And I think the weight of everything that was going on had got under I don't know, had him down. I don't want to say got under his skin. I think he was a bit overwhelmed coming into Saturday night. Like, sorry if you're out there, Barf Guy, but Barf Guy, he lightened the mood so much on Saturday night that, I'm not even. It was kind of a surprise on Sunday morning when they actually fired Walton. But even like that night, I think De'Aaron was in a much better mental spot after having like a moment of levity there on the court where somebody hurled all over the place and stopped the game, and just like the reaction from everybody. I thought he was better today. He has a long way to go. I know not everyone shares my opinion. He doesn't have to be a rah-rah leader. He has to be a leader, but I don't think he has to be the voice of the Sacramento Kings. He certainly needs to, play better if he's going to be the face of the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah. Friday night was such a bizarre night. Like Damien pointed out and tweeted out, we didn't think we were going to see Luke on Saturday. I had tweeted out, I don't know how you make it out of this. And, compounding all that is De'Aaron's interview on Friday. Now, we only saw a snippet, or at least I only saw a snippet. Was the entire interview that way, or was that just a bad part of that interview?
No, I don't know how much of the snippet you saw, but there wasn't much to it. We waited for a long time to get him, and then when he came in, there wasn't that much there. He was angry and frustrated. And so like I want to blow him up for that sometimes because I know that that's what happened. A lot of people were very upset with just his approach.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everybody who's in a situation like this, like there's a big time here we go again moment that's happened with this team. And I feel like that is something that it seeps in quietly and then it's there and it's on you and you're caught up in the moment of I cannot believe we're in this situation again. I mean, as someone who covers his team, I get that moment where I want to like walk out of the media room and put a hole in a wall where it's like, I can't believe we're in this situation again because it's not fun to cover when it happens like this, when it spins out like this and you see everything coming unglued. I'll be honest with you. Friday night, in the back of my mind, I thought we might have a first in Sacramento. And I kind of got the feeling that there was a possibility that Monty McNair would walk in to post game and not Luke Walton. And it didn't work out that way. But I kind of got the feeling, okay, this is a bad situation. I didn't expect it Saturday morning because if you're gonna replace a coach, there's no reason to just pen a loss on him instantly because everyone knows it doesn't matter how good the Sacramento Kings played on Saturday night. You're still probably going to lose to that team. That team is not only are they exceptional and are they like 12 deep of really, really good veteran NBA players, they're just a really bad matchup for the Kings. And so I expected them to lose, even to lose by 18. That really wasn't an 18-point loss in my mind. That was a 4-point game going into the fourth quarter that had some weirdness in the beginning of the quarter and then had this like ridiculous 20-minute delay where, I mean, they're mopping stuff up and like a dude staggering off the floor. It was a weird night. It was a weird night. Yeah.
This is a hot mess.
I said that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hot, well, he stood up and like his back was to us. Just so people know, we're up, I think we're in 104 looking down onto those guys. And all we could see was his back. And it was like, what's going on? Then the scoreboard inadvertently caught him throwing up everywhere because there was some commotion. So the in-stadium camera sort of was bouncing around, getting people yelling and cheering. And then it panned down to this guy who is just sitting there and then leans over and you're like, oh, that doesn't look good. And then he leans over and starts puking again. He had already covered everywhere. So when he stood up, we were kind of like, oh, we heard the groan. You look up, you see him hurling on the big screen. And then you look down and you're like, oh, I see him. He stood up and that poor guy, first of all, he didn't want to get up. And then his buddy, like, come on, you got to get up. You got to get up, and is dragging him out of his seat. He stood up and he's covered from head to toe in puke. I mean, he didn't just like hit the court. It was all over him. His pants were covered. It was so bad. And then he's staggering off the court and everybody's like, oh my gosh, he's going to fall. I thought he was going to fall into the Jazz bench. And then,
that would have been great.
Yeah. And then there's a lip coming off the court, going from the court down to the cement. I thought he was going to bail. I thought he was going to fall into fans. Larry, the amazing usher, is right there in the corner. I thought he was going to run into Larry. No one wanted to touch him. The security guard didn't want any part of him because the guy's covered in vomit. And then his buddy is walking out in front of him and he's trying to reach out and kind of like grab his buddy's shoulders to like steady himself and get off the court. It was bad. I mean, I think most people have had a bad night here or there when it comes to alcohol, but not like that. Not in, I don't know, $1,200 seats, whatever those were. Even if you got them at a discount, those were still expensive seats. And the other thing is, it's directly across from Vivek Ranadive. So that was one of those moments where it's so representative of what we've seen for the last 15 years. Just like someone did performance art right there on the court. That's what it was. It was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I mean, the basketball could have done the same thing. It didn't have to all be alcohol. It definitely could have done the same thing. So yeah, it was just a weird night, the whole night. So Saturday night, but that brought some levity in the media room. So when we were waiting for players and coaches, we were laughing hysterically. There were quite a few like inside jokes and just some funny moments while we were waiting for players. So maybe we weren't as far on top of guys as we normally would have been, like we were on Friday night. But at the same time, I think we all needed that because, again, these things, when they spin out like this and you see it coming and there's a freight train coming and and like there's nothing you can do to pull someone out in front, away from it. It's hard on everybody in the room because your content is bad. The players, even if they don't mean to, some of them just look so bad because of their reaction or the way they're talking or just, their refusal to like really give you anything. It comes across in such a bad way, which is, I think, a lot of what people saw with Fox. That's just some people deal with stress that way. They don't deal with it well. And it was a stressful situation.
1320 Kings Insider James Ham with us, of course, host of the tremendous Kings Beat podcast as well, in the Kings Beat newsletter. Here's what if they had won? What if they beat Utah? You mentioned it was a 4-point game going into the fourth quarter. What if they won?
I don't think he gets fired. I don't. I know that sounds crazy, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get fired, tomorrow. Like it would have depended on what happened. So
I feel like they've been waiting for this, particularly especially once that athletic report dropped, they were just waiting for the right moment to do this. And when they lost to Minnesota, I think that was the beginning of, okay, let's get out of this road trip and start to figure this out.
They thought, I think you're probably right. I think the decision was probably made, what is that, Wednesday? But I think there was a small possibility that, like, look, if you can win on Friday in front of the home crowd and we can avoid the booze and we can avoid the chaos, and then that's not what happened. And then the fans started to fire Luke Walton in the middle of the fourth. And then you got to Saturday night. And to be honest with you, Saturday night, it was a lot louder. It was a lot more people. So even if it may not have seemed that way because of the extended delay, there were plenty more people. It echoed. The first night, it was one section that was over by the Kings bench. then on Saturday night, it was a good portion of fans. They started booing in the opening of the fourth quarter when, and again, like you go back to that, it was just the little tiny things that the Kings do that make mistakes, and a team like Utah makes you pay every time. It was back-to-back threes and like a putback, and it was over. The game was over. And so, yeah, it just wild. But I've been through this so many times. I think Alvin Gentry's my 8th coach in 12 years.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
Westphal, Smart, Malone, Corbin, Carl, Jaeger, Walton, and now Gentry.
I don't know what kind of gift to give you for your 8th coach. There's got to be some way. We'll mark the 10th one. James. We'll mark the 10th one.
Yeah, when's that count? Next year, the year after?
You're certainly. I'm gonna guess you're gonna get a 9th one.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to give Alvin Gentry a shot here. They're going to give him a shot, and they converted his assistant coach job directly to a head coaching job, and his job next season, he's under contract for 1 more year. So if they put in an accelerator and then it goes back down to an assistant salary, that's one thing. But typically in these situations, agents won't do that. So it's like, look, if you're giving him the job, you're giving him the job. So if they let him go at the end of this season, then you could be looking at maybe, like we heard that there's incentives, right, for him to get the job for next year. Maybe those incentives are what triggers his salary next season to be a head coaching salary and not a assistant coach salary, because there's a huge difference there. And if he gets bumped up to a head coaching salary and then you fire him this summer, and you have to pay Walton's 5.75, and then whatever you're giving Gentry, whether that's 2.5 or 3 or 4, whatever, all of a sudden that becomes a really, really expensive year next year, where you're upwards of, $12-15 million when you factor in another new coach. Yeah. And so,
they could be paying 3 head coaches next year. That is phenomenal. Plus Vlade.
Hey, they've done that though. They've done that. So that's the funny thing about when Michael Malone got fired, they installed Ty Corbin in, and then he was an interim coach. So I made some calls and I'm like, hey, when is the interim tab getting pulled? And inside the franchise was like, well, we'll wait and see. Right. That's not what I got from the outside. From the outside, I got, he already got his contract 2 weeks ago. He's no longer the interim. He has a contract for this year and next year. And it's like, wait a sec. So I went back to the organization and said, hey, this is what I was just told. And they were like, oh, no, Ty Corbin's, he's just an interim this year and next year. And with an assistant salary for the next year. And I went to them. I said, that is not what I have been told. You need to get back to me on this. They called me back and said, yeah, Pete D'Alessandro did that without telling anyone. So yes, he is. And then, so they had Malone's salary. They fired Malone. I think he had 2 years left. They fired Ty Corbin. Ty Corbin had the remainder of that season and the next season because they bumped him up. And then they hired George Karl, who did not make it through the next season. Or he did make it through, but for no reason. And then, so you got to a point where they were literally paying at least 2 or 3 coaches at one time, and then had to hire another coach, and then hired Jaeger. So yeah, it's not good. It's not good business.
So James, and we'll there's some more things that maybe we can get into with the coaching situation. But for me, I've talked about it earlier, and these players, man, I said earlier, there are guys that I think individually are good ball players. You know what I mean? They're good. They can go somewhere else and do just fine. They're not bad guys. They're not bad teammates, nothing like that. But when you talk about this core, and I was looking specifically at guys that have been here for a little while, Barnes, Holmes, Fox, Buddy, as a group, they're not good. And they don't bring out the best in each other. That doesn't mean they hate each other or nothing like that. They just don't bring out the best in each other. And a lot of these guys, that core, is going on their 3rd coach now and still subpar play. Different styles, different demeanors of the coaches, all different. Yeah, it's these same guys who are here. And this isn't to say, like, again, this isn't to say that they're bad, but they don't seem to work together. What's your thought on the players' role in all this?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard. I asked the first question in McNair's press conference yesterday. He gave his opening statement, and then I asked the first question, and it was not. No one had hit the mute button on the Zoom, so I'm not sure that everyone heard that first question. I did put it out on my Twitter feed, and I specifically said, like, look, the players just quit on themselves. They just quit on each other. They just quit on Walton. They quit on the franchise. That's a much bigger problem than any head coach. What are you going to do about the players? And Monty skated the question, just avoided it. Like he just ducked right around it, started talking about going 5-4, and that's the team they think they are. And that's not the team they are on Sunday. That's not who they were that day. So I don't care who you think they were after 9 games. That's not who they are now. Now they're a team that once again has shown that they will let go of the rope, that they will not support each other, that they will not do the right things on the court that will help each other win. And it's not that you're losing by 5 points or someone hits a buzzer beater and you lose. You just laid down like 2 or 3 times at home by almost a 20-point margin. I mean, you're getting beat. You're not like barely losing. This has got to one of those, points where it's ugly. And that's not what this team should be. And if that is who they are, then somebody needs to make some major changes. And that somebody is Monty. And if it's not Monty, if he can't do it, it's got to be someone else. This thing has to change. And the players might have like 5 or 10 games here to show that that's not who they are. After that, you take a cleaver to this roster between December 15th and February or whatever it is.
Yeah, that I want to talk more about that date, December 15th. And I want to talk about someone who didn't get the interim coaching job. Doug Christie. I know you referenced that on the Kings Beat podcast, and we'll talk about that. There's a lot more ahead here as 1320 Kings insider James Ham joins us on this 49ers Monday. It's brought to you by Gilmore Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Right now, Gilmore is offering Niner fans a $49 furnace safety inspection. Just mention this ad. You get more with Gilmore, but we're coming back and we're talking Kings here on ESPN 1320. All right.
I'll be right back.
Okay. That was a good podcast. I enjoyed you guys just talking, eating, and you guys got a great rapport, man.
I dig it. I really do.
And I also dug listening to the music in the background.
Yeah, so
just faintly could kind of pick it up.
Yeah, and some people have complained, like on Twitter, and I'm like,
that's crazy.
Are you kidding
crazy.
me? Like
that's crazy.
And they have to understand there's nothing we can do. Like I went from the press conference straight to channel 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if you've ever made that trip from downtown to over to
it's West Sac.
Yeah, but
by IKEA.
If you go out and around the freeway, that's what I would have done. But I used Waze and it took me on this back little road. So as opposed to getting on 5, there's another exit that goes it says West Sac. So I took that. Then it took me across this old rusty bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Well,
yeah.
I'm driving on that bridge and a guy with a big old dually pickup got too close and we hit mirrors on the bridge.
Jeez.
Shattered my mirror on my van. But that's how close we came. So close. We sideswiped mirrors, and I'm on my way over there and I got a mirror dangling and hanging off. I'm like, oh! So I had to run over there, and then I did the hit with them. Then I had to go back to the arena. By that time, they had kicked Sean out, so we've got nowhere to do the pod, and we can't sit. There's too many variables out there at the Doco.
Yeah.
There's some odd ducks. There are guys who ride by on bikes with like boom boxes strapped all to them with loud, crazy music. They're weird people. They're,
Yeah.
so we have to find somewhere to sit. And we were going to go back to Yard House, and Yard House was packed. And so we got on the list there, but I'm like, let's try this little wine bar. And man, at Vine and Grain, what a cool spot. And it's right across from Yard House, but we were just sitting there and chilling. They could have turned the music down a little bit, but I don't think they figured out how to do it. And we just sat there. I had a glass of wine. Sean,
it was far from a bother. I just got a kick out of it, but I love I thought it was great. I thought the podcast was really good. All episodes have been really good, but I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, we're building, I like Sean and I have a good rapport. And I was saying this to someone earlier. Like, I've known Sean for a long time. We know each other really, really well. I didn't know how what his approach would be to podcast form, because like I talk to him all I know how he talks, but when you turn the mic on, you kind of worry that someone's gonna like not be as authentic with what they're saying. And now he's saying things that I did not believe he would say. And it opens the door for me to say other things that I typically wouldn't say, or bring up things that I might not bring up. And so I think that that's the element that people are getting. It's two guys that know way too much that are like, let's roll.
Yeah, it's good stuff. If you guys are on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, please. There's over 300 people watching just on YouTube alone. So if you're in there, could you hit the thumbs up? And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button as well. Kenny and I are here Monday through Friday, noon to 4, and we post tons of other content to the page as well. So hit the subscribe button if you haven't, and hit the thumbs up as well. We're coming back now. It's 49ers Monday, brought to you by City Center Financial. Refinance today below 1.99% APR at 1866 Go City 6. 49ers get back to 500 after the win yesterday against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But the story today is the Sacramento Kings moving on from Luke Walton. Alvin Gentry stepping in as the interim head coach. He'll coach his first game tonight at the Golden One Center against the Philadelphia 76ers. 1320 Kings insider James Ham with us here on Twitch, YouTube, the Odyssey app, and of course on 1320 AM. James, I do want to talk about Alvin Gentry, but I want to talk about a guy who we all know very well, whose name was mentioned a bit to my surprise by Adrian Wojnarowski early in this process yesterday afternoon, and that was Doug Christie. I know you shared a couple of stories on the Kings Beat podcast, but how close do you think Doug was to getting this interim job?
Man, I don't know. To be honest with you, when Woj starts tweeting stuff, then it's at least, I had started hearing that a couple of days earlier that Doug was being considered. I've had conversations with Doug because Doug and I worked together for a long time. We're close. I'm not going to divulge what any of those discussions were with Doug, because those are like off the record conversations with a friend. But at the same time, like, my advice is what I've told you guys. Like, I think Doug can be a really good head coach in this league. He's just not ready like that. And that there's nothing wrong with not being ready. Like, and there's nothing he could do to be ready faster. You have to be inside of an organization doing things, nonstop. Like, I think that some people say, well, some guys just go straight from the NBA right to a head coach. Well, that's different. That's not the same thing, because Doug's career as a player ended, 15 years ago. So while he's been doing radio and he's been doing television over the last 5 or 6 years, he had not been in that locker room doing the things that you do. Like, there's just such a different thing that you have to be when you're a head coach. You have to be able to manage all the personalities. You've got to be able to, but it's even more than that. There's structures to the situation. You need to know when you're practicing. You need to set up timelines. You need to have a practice schedule, like what we're going to do every 5 minutes. What does a walkthrough look like? And Doug has been back in the building doing that for 17 games. So that's just not enough time to get sort of your flow with like what it means to be a coach, because we're not even talking about what happens when you go to the media room after. Like that's another part of your job. So it's probably not just as much as like, how do you talk to the players? How do you talk to the media? How do you talk to, management and manage all of this stuff? It's more basic, like how much time do you have to talk to your players after a game before you've got to run and talk to media? By the time you get back to the locker room, is anyone still going to be in there? When do you fit in a conversation with your coaches? How do we manage what's going to happen for the game tomorrow? That's what I'm talking about. There's
Being a coach
just,
is a lot more than just coaching.
there's a lot more than standing out there with tie on and yelling and screaming at players. It's a lot more to it.
Now it's a crew neck, as Kenny will point
Oh,
out. You
oh,
stand out there in a crew neck sweatshirt.
that was, like I said yesterday, the straw that broke the camel's back. When they came out in that Utah game in crew necks, please, time to move on.
Kenny is not a fan of the lax dress code in for the NBA coaches.
I need the Armani suits back, baby. Come on.
Yeah, and like, look, again, I think Doug can be that guy. I do, and I think Bobby Jackson is down at the G League level. He's learning what it means to take on all of those responsibilities and having to manage all of these personalities, all these people, the training staff. A head coach has to manage. If you get two trainers that get into a fight or an argument, like a lot of times that it's on you to go and like, let's have a conversation. Do I need to let go of somebody? Even the Monty situation, we talked about this on the podcast. Monty's a bright guy. He's a guy who, he has an incredible Ivy League, like schooling, and he grew up in the Houston Rocket system, but he had to fire somebody yesterday. And there's possibilities that Monty McNair never fired someone before. And that's hard. And so like when you see him come in and his eyes are a little red, and even Luke, we saw that on Friday. I think Friday is the night that Luke knew things were going completely south. He was pretty visibly like different. But even with Monty, I think that there's something to that. Like there's such a human element that no one wants to talk about. And a lot of it is just basics. Like you've never fired someone. Even if he has fired someone, how many? Have you done it twice over 30 years or, however long his work history is? Or have you done it many, many times? Because I've done it many times, and you get callous to it, and you have an understanding that it's either him or her or you. Like someone has made a mistake and they've got to go. And if you don't take care of that, then it's going to come back to haunt you and you'll be the one who gets fired. But in that situation, like I think people need to look at like maybe a slightly bigger picture of this, back out just a little bit and go, okay, like there are a lot of things in play in this whole situation.
James, we're about to go there. Okay. You think you and Sean go there? Oh no, we're about to go there. Now, let me know if you don't want to go there, but
it's too late now. You've already started.
We hear the reports of Doug Christie. And then, I listened to the King's Beat podcast. Shout out to the King's Beat, doing a great job. Yesterday, the vibe was so thick, at the place that you guys were at. I heard Aaliyah rock the boat in the background. I mean, the vibes were crazy on that King's Beat podcast. I loved it. You guys alluded to the fact that there were people in the decision-making process who really did want Doug Christie right now. And we're vouching for that. Who's making decisions around here? Let's go into in your opinion, from everything you know, who is part of this decision-making process? Because if I go to David Field, CEO of Odyssey, and I said, David Field, this is who you should be your CFO. All right, you got an opening. This is who it should be. He'd be like, that's nice, radio guy in Sacramento. Move on. But it could be reported that Kenny wanted Doug Christie, or there's people in the organization who wanted Doug Christie to be part of the head coach, but I had no sway, right? I got no say so. So who knows, that reporting can go so sideways. When you talk about these type of reports, who is the brain trust? Who's making these decisions right now, or a part of it, I should say?
Well, to me, like this one is out of left field. Like I don't even know how else to put it, because I think what it does, this one more than any of the others, probably exposes the people that have been around long enough to really know who Doug is as a person. Because Monty and Wes Wilcox and Ken Cantnell, Ken's been here a long time, but but that group they haven't been here that long. So while Doug is a former player and they remember who Doug was, maybe as a player. I mean, even what is Monty, 36? So when Monty was in his early 20s, Doug was finishing up his career. They might know who Doug is, but that tells me that there's someone else behind the scenes that's pushing somebody. And when it gets out, it's almost like Doug wasn't going to get the job, but we're going to put it out there because that's what's next. That we're going to put it out there because that's sort of like, well, he was in the discussion last time, right? So that's where I've got to start wondering, like, why is it out there? Who put it out there? I've got to do some more research on it, but the fact that it didn't just become like a known thing in Sacramento behind the scenes that reporters murmured to each other that our sources had said this, or Doug's name's been added to it. The fact that it got to the Wojnarowski angle and that it got that big, and that not only was Alvin Gentry mentioned, but 5 minutes later, oh, and by the way, somebody called and said, hey, I need you to mention Doug Christie is a potential guy as well. And so it got to that stage because that's how that worked. I mean, that you can watch it play out on Twitter all you want. In my mind, I see how that is working. That is a continuation of a conversation. And so somebody is putting that out there, and that's why I'm like, hey, there's a possibility down the road. Alvin could work this season. Doug could train under him for a year, and then next season we could see something like that. But I think that brings us back to the problem at hand, right? Like, everyone wants a full coaching search. This thing has not gone the way that anyone hoped or thought it would go. You need, if you're going to do this the right way, you need to assess what Alvin did, but you get to the end of the season, you assess that as well as bring in 5 or 6 top names, not bottom of the barrel, not some guy that no one's ever heard of. I mean, I want to see Kenny Atkinson on that list. I want to see, if you want to give Scotty Brooks a potential look again, a local guy who I think grew up in Manteca and who was an assistant here before. Like, there's a list of names that I think should really be looked at before you make any decision. And the fact that we're already hearing that there's a potential for somebody to move up through the ranks here in Sacramento who literally just joined the ranks, that it's the same stuff again and again. It's the same exact mistakes that you just can't seem to get out of the way. And so that is a concern. It's a concern. And it's not a concern because I think Doug will be a very, very good assistant. And I think he can even be potentially a really good head coach, but he's going to need the staff to build around it. He's going to need a lot of, help along the way, guidance along the way to get him to where you're comfortable doing that. And you're comfortable with him stepping into a role where he's not going to be a pariah in Sacramento 2 years from now. And that's always my concern. As Doug's friend, I don't want him to be talked about the way that Vlade Divac and Peja Stojakovic are at this point in Sacramento. Give the guy the tools to succeed. And the tools to succeed, part of it is giving him time to grow into. That's one of the tools, is Doug getting the experience to be ready to do it. And if this is just my opinion, but I don't think he would have walked in with the tools. And I think their potential for disaster was there. And maybe he could have captured lightning in a bottle, but still, you need more than just 17 games on the job to become an NBA head coach.
Yeah.
You're listening to D-Lo and KC along with James Ham here on ESPN 1320 KIFM, West Sacramento and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lashers, Elk Grove Dodge. There aren't very many people who've been around that long in this organization. That's not a question. I guess that's just a statement. So I don't know. I just felt like somebody needed to say it, so I'll say it. There aren't very many people that have been around that long. So
There's a couple. There's a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You're
but
gonna you've
always-
whatever hair the fan base has remaining in their head, they probably just pulled out.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get the frustration. For me, it's
Look
the
at Kenny.
same.
Look what you did to Kenny. Look at him.
Yeah.
Look what you did to him.
It's the same frustration because it's why. It's why do we have to go there? Why is this discussion that we are having right now? Why is this happening? Because
Again,
you just fired a coach and you had a guy who is tailor-made. This is literally what Alvin Gentry has done 3 other times. He has been the guy who takes over a team when everything goes wrong and he steps in and becomes the guy. That's why you hired Alvin Gentry, so he could do this. It's why they tried to hire Alvin Gentry during the Michael Malone era, specifically so he could step in and take the job. So why explore a different thing? And you're right. Someone has been around. It almost feels like the Vlade and Peja thing where you're doing a backhanded grab for power. It's confusing. It's confusing why this would come up. And so anyway, I'm with you. I understand what you're insinuating, that there's someone who's promoting this idea. But the fact
I would
is
say Littlefinger, but I don't fully understand the reference.
I'm
So
not exactly sure what that is.
But you guys, man, you need to watch the Game of Thrones. I'm not a big Game of Thrones, won't catch me out wearing a costume or something, but yeah, there is always someone whispering in the ear, and that's what this sounds like. So
and to Damien's point, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Damien, and if I'm off, but this, you're talking about a handful, maybe less than a handful of people where this could have came from.
Yeah.
If it's the same play that's been going on for 8 years, there's a handful or less than a handful of people who have been here for 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's the same play.
Same story, same mistake.
Play. And I just reading the comments, which I know I've been told do not do.
Be careful.
Someone said Mark Jackson is not liked because he's a Christian. I think you probably need to do a little bit more research on Mark Jackson before you make that statement.
It's a little wilder than that.
It's a little wilder than that. And if that's the line that you want to take, you probably should do the research on the type of Christian he was or is. And so go ahead and go ahead and do your research on Mark Jackson.
Yeah,
and
that ain't it.
So no.
That
ain't it.
I don't feel like you're and I guess no one should be overwhelmed, but I don't feel like you're particularly thrilled or optimistic about Alvin Gentry as the interim coach. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, I mean, I like Alvin. Actually, he's such a straight shooter. He's actually really fun to talk to. But at the same time, what does this mean? I mean, this is where you're at again. So, I hope that he can catch, the imagination of the players. But, Tyrone Corbin was a really, really good dude as well. And a guy who had spent years as an assistant and had some head coaching experience. And he went 7-21. And that is literally where the term "welcome to basketball hell" comes from. And that's when Rudy Gay told that to George Karl when he got here, when George Karl took over for Ty Corbin. The potential, prove me wrong, I guess, is what I say to Alvin Gentry. And it's not calling out Alvin Gentry. It's prove me wrong that you can make this particular team do something that they have shown they can't do. And that is get out of their own way and just play and just succeed. This team has a problem with succeeding, with embracing success, thriving to get success. They talk a lot about what they want to be and who they think they are. And then they do this. They get a coach fired 17 games into a season because they stop playing. And so the fragility of this team But it's not just this team. This is something that happened in 2012, something that happens 2014. Like every single couple of years, we deal with this same exact thing. The newness of a head coach wears off, and then the players don't take the next step when they're supposed to, and then the coach gets fired. And then we repeat the process again and again and again. And so at some point, like, you have to find players that will like push through and succeed.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't. Maybe we just keep living in this repetitive motion, spinning around in circles.
It's funny you say that, James, because I look at this situation, I think about De'Aaron Fox. And yeah, if he was in a different situation, maybe he'd be playing different, maybe he'd be some type of leader. But this ain't Philly or New York or Boston or anything. But this is hard. Whatever is going on here in Sacramento, this is hard. And it's clear to me that I think you need either a special player or a special group of guys that you just mentioned won't be deterred by some of the shortcomings or the frustrations that come along with this franchise and can fight through that, has a mental toughness that can fight through that to achieve the goal of just ending the playoff drought. I ain't even talking championship, just in the playoff drought. That alone is pretty tough, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think maybe the pressure has been taken off Fox here because of what's happened, and maybe we'll see a different player. I think it's possible. It's very, like, the last 2 days, his personality has changed quite a bit. And I don't want to say like he's manic. I think you could see like the weight of the world crushing him as we got to, through Friday. And then I think we saw things start to lighten up. He started to, like, you're starting to see him like starting to realize how bad this situation is playing on him mentally and how he needs to get himself out of that. And so I hope that, like, again, this could be a moment where Fox or someone else steps forward and just becomes who they should be. And maybe that's pie in the sky and hopeful. But at the same time, I watched how good he was last year. And I know how good he was a year before coming into the season before he hurt his ankle and how high they were on him. And I think he can get back there. I just think that, as much as anything else, people need to realize he's still 23 years old. And no one wants the excuse, but he's still growing into the man he's going to be, not just the player. And it's not always easy. That's why a guy like Tristan Thompson, who's been through the highs and the lows of everything, can come out and just say all kinds of crazy things, but in a way that makes sense to everybody. And even Harrison Barnes has those moments where, okay, this makes sense to everybody. There are times when, De'Aaron Fox doesn't exactly know who he is completely as a person. He's just not that to that point. When we were 23 years old, we weren't either. And we have to understand that that's part of this. It's just that he makes $28.1 million and feels the pressure of that, as well as losing and coaches getting fired and just not playing well and the jumper not going in and all of that stuff.
How much blame, James, do you put on Monty McNair? You absolutely held Monty's feet to the fire yesterday. I thought Monty had a really bad day yesterday. I think Monty's had a really bad start to the season. And it started when you tweeted Luke Walton will be back as the Sacramento Kings head coach next year. I think that was the beginning of things going bad for Monty McNair.
Yeah, I think continuity-wise, he was looking for something. He thought continuity would help this team. And I think a lot of people were like, okay. Like, and let's be honest, Monty McNair gave Luke Walton like maybe like 3 tools in a toolbox last year. Like he did not give him a full set of tools to work with. And that's not, like if you've got to do all of your home improvements with a hammer and a screwdriver, things probably aren't going to look great when you're done. And so I think Monty took his way of taking responsibility. And I thought, we go back to that press conference last year, the end of the season, Monty McNair had a huge moment at that press conference where I thought he took complete ownership of the team and what had happened and the fact that he did not bring enough pieces and all that stuff. We get to this point, and I mean, he was he was a dude playing dodgeball. He dodged every major question, and he could tell you that I didn't. And I think there are a lot of times where you can read between the lines with him. I don't even know that there was that much reading between the lines with him. There was just not, he did not know what to say.
Mhm.
And he thinks he built a team that can be competitive. But we all know that he tried to trade Buddy Hield, right before the season started.
Mhm.
Like, he tried to trade Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield. He's tried to make trades. The trades have never come. And so while you see the framework of what can be, you see a team like we talked about it earlier. I thought this was a team of 9 players and 2 guys waiting to get traded for the 10th.
Hmm.
And those 2 players were Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. Well, they're still here. And now Chimezie Metu's one of your 9. And Buddy Hield hasn't hit a shot. I think he's got 1 make in the last 3 games in the first half. And that's not helping
Jesus.
anybody either. Like, he came into Saturday night's game, 1 of 15 in the first half over his previous 2 games. And then I think he went 0 for 5. Like, that's
insane.
like, if you want it, like, and that's where we get to the, like, Buddy is trying too hard. And it's not that Buddy wants to miss shots, because I know he doesn't. But sometimes players try too hard, and that's what happens. Like, the outcome that you see is Buddy Hield is off by a millimeter, and the ball clanks out and comes out of the rim. That's this game. If you're off by just that little tiny bit, if you're just putting that little bit too much pressure on yourself, it can be disastrous. And again, like, Friday night's game, I thought he single-handedly shot the Kings out of the game. And I thought the same thing in Minnesota. Single-handedly shot the Kings out of the game in the second quarter, and the late first and early second. And I'm not just putting all the blame on one player, because I know his intentions are pure. I know his intentions are to try to help the team and try to be better. And then it just becomes like a bad situation. So yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to the onion. That's what we're always talking about with this team.